We are live again. It is 3 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. I want to share this on my page so that folks can follow along. Give me 1 second. Get started. I shouldn't do that, should I? Okay, sorry for the dead air time. Thanks for joining us. A lot has changed or come at us over the course of the last week, so we'd like to get you caught up on where we are, both the status of cases here in Dutchess County and then some updated information, including taking your questions. So if you have a question, please just add it to the comment section below the live feed, and we'll get to as many as we can. Now, we have another town hall scheduled next Wednesday. Remember, that's a telephone town hall and Facebook Live event. I'm going to prepare you for that call. We're going to attempt to get through as many live phone call questions as we can. I know it's been a little bit of a struggle, mostly for me. The questions can be answered more quickly than I answer them. So we're going to try to get through as many telephone questions next week as possible, but again, next Wednesday. Now, we are going to begin the process of trying to communicate with you as regularly as possible. We may end up having an extra live event throughout the week, because as we sort of begin this next phase of response to the pandemic, there's going to be a lot of information being thrown out there at us quite quickly. Do we have that first slide that you guys worked up? I want to start with this one, because about a week and a half ago, someone asked me, are the numbers trending in the right direction? And I said, yeah, we can see daybreak. And I think right now what I tell you is that we've begun a new day. This is the next phase of responding to this crisis. And the reason that I can say that is not only are our cases trending in the right direction, or data points trending in the right direction, but more importantly, I should say, not more importantly, as importantly as that, a lot of decisions are now being made around us that we're going to have to plan for, prepare for, and react to. And that could be the federal government's action as it relates to the parameters for reopening. It will be the fact that other states are advancing their reopening activities based on their own decision making, but some in proximity to New York, and that's going to affect us. And of course, as you know, the governor sort of outlined broad expectations for restarting activity. So I think it's critical for us at the local level especially, but all of us as community leaders in one fashion or another, to be very clear about what we expect. So I wanted to make sure we started here. And this is what you ought to expect from us. Number one, in this county, as we proceed, just as we have up until now, we're going to collaborate with stakeholders. So that is local business leaders and businesses, it's families, it's county, it's local elected officials, it's county leaders, but it's also collaboration among layers of government. Continue that partnership with state and federal government. Continue to work with other counties across this region, and I'll talk a little bit about that today. It's going to require exceptional communication, and I don't mean that exceptional like great communication. I mean it's going to require us to stay in regular communication with you so that you know what to expect from us, and that as we develop very specific plans for both how we react to the environment around us and how we react to restarting economic activity, and it will happen. We need to be able to clearly articulate to you both the risks and the challenges that we'll face. So you have our word. This is sort of going to be our clarion call, our pledge to you: regular communication, ongoing collaboration, honest about risks, and very specific about the steps we intend to take. And the goal here is to protect lives while at the same time enabling you to get back to your life. Now that won't start immediately, but I think it sets the tone for what you should expect out of us in the weeks going forward, because it was as complex as it was to get to this point, responding to a pandemic, closing the operations, if you will, of government and economy. It is going to be more complex moving forward, and there will be more questions than there are answers. And when we don't have the data, we're going to say it. When we can't get you the information, we'll explain why. And we'll every day work hard to get you the right information, data, and answers necessary to proceed. So let's start where we usually do, and that is with our dashboard and some of the data that you should be aware of. So Dutchess County to this date has conducted over 16,660 tests, 16,669 tests, with a total confirmed caseload of 3,002 positive cases. Now, the good news is we have seen continued growth in recoveries, and we'll talk about hospitalizations in a moment, but we also have seen deaths climb in the county. Again, if you go online and look up the data that the state of New York has, or some other avenues provide you that information, remember our data is always going to be after the state data, so 24 hours after the state data. We spend time clarifying and validating that information, and that is true for deaths as well. So you might go to the state site and they might show you, I think, 81 or 82 reported deaths. Our job at the health departments locally is to validate that information. Now, death reports sadly come from multiple locations, so we did receive access to the database. You might remember we asked the governor for county access to this database, and now we're able to tease out information and really get to the to sort of finer detail. So we've confirmed 58 deaths, and what I say to people is that there are reported 80 deaths, but there are confirmed 58 deaths. Now that number will fluctuate, and it may not be the result of, sadly, and I say this respectfully, more people dying. It may be that we're clarifying data, but we'll explain that as we go along. But nevertheless, at the moment, 58 confirmed deaths, 854 identified recoveries, and hospitalizations have been very interesting to watch. And so what I can tell you is that we have seen the consistent decline in hospitalizations, and within those hospitalizations, a decline in severity of cases. And you can see this particular graph, I think, shows you pretty graphically and visually, obviously, what we're starting to see. So this 3-day rolling average of hospitalizations, you can see the regular and steady decline, and we expect that, at this point, we expect that to continue. The next hospitalization slide, I think, is equally valid. Is there one more? And that is just to give you the current number, 64 hospitalized out of a total capacity, and it fluctuates a little bit, of 528. And so what I will tell you is that the hospitalizations peaked at 130, 150 at one point, and then declined over a period of time. The 64 is a relatively, is now a lower number. We think that based on what we can see, that trend will continue. So one more hospital slide, I don't recall. So those are the two that I think show you what we've been seeing. And those are important data points. Hospitalization and the severity of hospitalization is a good indicator as to what we should be prepared for. And when you match that with the total number of active cases, it gives us a clearer picture as to what we're experiencing. So we're experiencing a decline in active cases, which is good news. Still, however, we're seeing deaths, of course, because of the disease. But hospitalization and the severity of hospitalization is starting to decline. And that, for us, says that we're in a different phase of responding. And so looking forward and preparing for what will be next, which is trying to get you back to your lives. I want to just highlight a couple points. This is a very busy month when it comes to recognizing sort of folks on the front lines of responding. First and foremost, May begins National Correctional Officers Week, May 3rd to May 9th. So I want to, on behalf of Dutchess County, recognize and thank the men and women who work at the Dutchess County Jail, and also those who work at correctional facilities across New York and across America, providing that important assistance and security. They're critical to our response to public safety, and of course, in many ways, provide assistance to the individuals we care for, inmates in our facilities, and we're grateful for all of your work, and we're thankful for the sacrifice that you make on our behalf every day. Yesterday, I joined Mayor Rob Rollison at Vassar Brothers Medical Center, where we kicked off National Nurses Week, and we wanted to be sure that we began to recognize those men and women who are working in hospitals and public health settings all across America, but all across Dutchess County. So National Nurses Week began on May 6th, runs through the end of the week. and May 12th is the conclusion of Nurses Week, which happens to correspond with, and the reason for the recognition, with Florence Nightingale's birthday, as just a point of interest. And so I think we recognize that the dedication of nurses, both in public and private settings, those who provide direct care to seniors and those with intellectual and developmental disabilities, rely on nurses, as do we. We've seen we've seen the dedication and the support and the sacrifice that so many of you made, and we're exceptionally grateful for that. And I don't know that we'll ever be able to adequately express our gratitude, but you deserve it nonetheless, and we're very, very grateful to all of you. I am personally for the experience I had with nurses at Westchester Medical, but for all of you, we're very, very grateful. This is also National Teachers Week, and May 4th through May 8th, recognizing our teachers. This recognition was originally proposed by one of Dutchess County's favorite daughters, Eleanor Roosevelt, in 1944, proposed recognizing public school teachers and teachers overall, and that moved from March to May in 1985. So we now collectively pause to recognize our teachers, and the challenge teachers have had transitioning from a traditional classroom to a virtual classroom, and losing that very special time that they have with students. I know has been a real Herculean task, a real challenge. Would you like that one? Herculean. It's been a real challenge for teachers, and I know as a parent myself, I'm very, very grateful for the work that the teachers in my children's lives are doing. But to all of you who are working in the virtual classroom, taking time maybe to visit your students from a distance, some of you are driving around visiting from your vehicle, which is perfectly permissible, I might add. You can certainly get in your car with hopefully no one other than those in your household, and if you wanted to drive around visiting some of the students, you can wave and yell from the car. That is perfectly permissible under the rules today, and I know that many of you are. The other I want to recognize, I think the governor touched on this and likely touched a nerve when he did, and so I'll address it. We've learned these last couple of weeks that we can lean on technology to be helpful, but I think the governor understands, and I know that I do as well, that nothing replaces the interaction that our teachers have with students. I think every one of us can look back as children and point to some teacher in our life that made a difference. I remember mine. I know Linda Greenblatt would be upset if I didn't acknowledge her, but I also would be remiss without acknowledging one of my social studies teachers, Steve Sutton, who encouraged me to get into public service. And if you don't like the fact that I'm in public service, you can blame him. But encouraged a kid who wasn't sure what he wanted to do as an adult to go out to get involved in public service, current events, and can tell you that it really encouraged me to take part in a program called Presidential Classroom, and from there inspired in me a desire to be in public service. Steve Sutton did that. But I also remember Mrs. Badami from J.B. Forrestal Elementary School, who was horrible to me. She was doing her job, and I remember how very strict she was. And she took a third grader or a fourth grader who maybe wasn't doing his homework so much, and made it clear there were things we had to do. I think as you look back, as students today look back, they will, without question, remember 2020 as a definitional year for them. But it will be the relationships that teachers sustained in this challenging time that they'll appreciate the most in their educational experience, and nothing replaces that. And so on behalf of the people of Dutchess County, I want to express our thanks to all of the teachers who every day commit to making a difference in the lives of our kids. And many families have come to realize not only the value, but the true relationship that teachers have with students as we try to sustain that as parents ourselves. So we're grateful to all of you. That's enough, but I'm very, very grateful and want you to know that it is that relationship that teachers have with students that is so very, very special and without question cannot be replicated through social media or some virtual means. We can lean on that technology, we can use that technology, but we can't replace the relationships that we have with teachers, and that I think is very, very special. So to that end, last week Governor Cuomo announced what we agree was the right decision in Dutchess County, and that is the closing of school buildings for the duration of the school year. We're obviously very concerned about the transmission of the disease. We recognize the challenge that school closures pose. I can't imagine or understand the disappointment, the sadness, and even the anger that many students, teachers, and families have because of that decision. But for the greater public health, it was necessary. I will tell you, in order to protect staff and students and slow the transmission of the disease, even in homes, it made sense at this point, having been closed for the time we've been closed. I also want to say that whatever emotion you have is perfectly appropriate, and we get it. I had a call today with school superintendents. We're trying to work together. We are working together, but we're trying to work together to attempt to address commencement exercises. There are some creative ways that perhaps we could allow and enable seniors in particular to celebrate safely. We want to support school districts in that regard, and hopefully we can come up with some solutions. I'll tell you personally, I embrace the concept of a drive-in kind of graduation. We're hopeful the state might embrace that as well. We're going to work with districts that want to engage in some creativity for commencement to advocate for them. We're working together as the state unveils what the expectation is for summer school, what expectations there are, and how we might be able to assist in providing both training and support. Maybe it's PPE, maybe it's just protocols on cleanliness and disinfectant, what have you. We're going to work with school districts on that. You may know that I asked the governor quite seriously to take into consideration the need for ongoing special education services. I'd offer to you that some of those services can't occur virtually or in isolation, so we're going to have to find ways in order to provide that direct support to young people who have intellectual and developmental disability needs, and sent a letter to the governor asking quite seriously for consideration of those concerns. It's very personal to me, but I know many families are struggling overall, but those with developmental disabilities are struggling the hardest to maintain a level of education and not see a progressive regression. So we're focused on that as well. Let me also update you a little bit on where we are with some decision making on summer camps and summer camp activities. This county governments under the state rules are required to regulate different groupings of camps, seasonal communities being one of them, traditional campsites being another, private camps, overnight camps being a third, and then summer activities sponsored by municipalities. We are functioning as if these are not being canceled in their entirety, and the reason that is because we've seen indication that the state is looking at maintaining these activities for a number of reasons. One, the social aspects, and two, the economic. That in order to get businesses functioning at some point, we need these services to support families and kids. So we're planning for the expectation that these activities will commence again this summer. So that you're aware, we've advised the supervisors and mayors of Dutchess County that those seasonal communities and those campground activities would likely be manageable to commence at the end of May. So we're expecting like June 1st to be able to have those activities commence. So we're working over the course of the next several weeks with those organizations that have private campsites or seasonal communities to get their permits in. We're expecting and we're setting protocols. We're saying to everyone, summer camps, seasonal camps, and municipal camp activities, these are the parameters you would have to function in: safety protocols, cleaning, personal protection, and the like. And then we have a series of questions they're going to have to answer. And if they can meet the expectation and the state authorizes them to proceed, we'll permit them in this sort of phased approach. Seasonal communities first with private campgrounds, RV, tent camping, that kind of thing, toward the end of May into the first week of June. The summer camps, the overnight sort of camps, and the municipal day camps would be permissible in our estimation the first week of July. So those are the phased approaches that we're functioning within. Again, the state will set the broad parameters. We'll look within them. We're giving protocols to these organizations from the health department to establish what the standards are. There are going to be a series of questions that need to be answered, and then we'll consider applications on a case-by-case basis, and we'll proceed so long as the state is advising us to do that. So that's where we are. Jennifer asked if we're going to have the Dutchess County Fair. There is no one in Dutchess County who wants the county fair more than I do. I can't answer that question today. I do think that depending on where we are with cases, and as we look at what occurs in other parts of the country, I can tell you that fairs like ours are a part of a national association of fairs, and they're and there are other amusement destinations that have been working toward establishing protocols. I would say to you that it is unlikely to have big events of that nature, certainly before the August time frame. So we've advised the county fairgrounds to at least, and again, this is a private entity that operates the fairgrounds. They do great work. Annie Parati is the director there. We've advised them to look at those national protocols that the associations are looking at, establish what you think would be the safest way to operate, which is likely to be much smaller than the traditional county fair, and then determine if that's even feasible for them. And if it is, then we'll work with the state to determine if that's appropriate or not. So they're going to go through that process, and we'll tell you as we know more, but I would say not much ahead at the fairgrounds or anything of the like that size because of the concern regarding mass gatherings and what have you, certainly before August. That said, Lauren and Kelly and many others are asking about hair salons and nail salons. Let me first tell you that the governor established a broad outline for unpausing that could begin as soon as May 16th, sort of 7 steps in multiple phases. We've launched our Restarting Dutchess effort. I know some of you have already said to me, "Why are you doing this? Don't open the doors yet." We're planning. Just as I said before, our job is to plan and prepare and then react. And we want to do it in a deliberate and smart way. So Restarting Dutchess is our effort to focus on several categories and areas within restarting community activity. Local government, we work with our towns, villages, and cities. County government functions, restarting and reconstituting county activities. Economic development, so small business and small business support. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then the financial and fiscal impacts, and they're great, enormous impacts on individuals. But this team will be focused on county government finances. So we're in regular weekly meetings discussing what reconstituting and restarting look like with legislators. We meet with supervisors and mayors, faith-based community, not-for-profits, local colleges, school districts, and our public health, our healthcare system, talking about reconstituting with the expectation that if we meet the standards, and we believe we can, that this region could begin the process of restarting the week after May 15th. So I would expect that some activities could commence the week of May 19th. That said, to the question Lauren and Kelly asked, I don't foresee that hair salons and nail salons and that type of activity would be the first businesses to begin because of the concern regarding personal hygiene and protecting slowing the transmission. But we've seen it occur in other states, which in some ways is a way for us to monitor. So number one, phase one seems like it will likely be those businesses you can activate without concern for a lot of that transmission of the disease. So construction, manufacturing, landscaping, those kinds of activities I foresee could occur the week of May 19th, assuming we've met the broad expectations of driving down those cases. Gay Marie has asked a little bit about the regions working, the Mid-Hudson region and how we're working together. I think we have a Mid-Hudson region slide. So, the governor talked about this a couple of weeks ago. He's using the economic development regions as a basis. These regions are the regions he created for the purposes of distributing dollars for economic development. We would argue in the Mid-Hudson, in the Upper Hudson Valley, if you will, that the Mid-Hudson region is a little bit more complicated than that. So I think, as you know, what we've said is first, Ulster, Dutchess, and Orange continue to work together. We're continuing to collaborate. Yes, remember one of those pledges, we're collaborating with one another. We've agreed and announced this week that we're expanding that 3-county collaboration to include Dutchess, Ulster, Orange, Putnam, Sullivan, Greene, and Columbia. So 7 counties will meet this week to collaborate, and we're asserting that, quite frankly, that this is a logical region. I will tell you publicly, the governor has already acknowledged that Rockland, Westchester South is different than the rest of the state. In fact, he had a slide that said Rockland, Westchester South, and then rest of state. So publicly they've acknowledged there's a difference, and then I will tell you quite confidently, privately they've acknowledged that Rockland and Westchester is different than the rest of the region. So we are confident that we will be given certain appreciation for that difference, but also be aware that our proximity to New York City poses for us areas of concern. We're going to address those things together with the other 6 counties in that particular region. Barbara asked about hand sanitizers for essential construction workers. Barbara, if you're in a business or if you want to reach out to Dutchess Business Notification Network, DutchessBNN.com. Dutchess County is working with our regional chamber of commerce to access some hand sanitizers, PPE, and others. The chamber itself has been working with private business to expand access, so that's an opportunity for you to access that as well. We're going to continue that operation to provide PPE to essential frontline staff, to emergency responders, and to work with the private sector to expand access, including, by the way, municipal staff, as we begin the process of restarting municipal governments as well. Let me be specific, though, as I said we would be. This is not going, there's no analogy that makes sense. Restarting is not going to be immediate, and it's not like opening a door or even opening a valve. Every decision we make is going to be based on limiting transmission so that we don't overwhelm the healthcare system. When we were up at 125 to 150 cases in hospital, that's a major burden and concern within the hospital system. So what we'll do with the state is responsibly push what we think makes sense when, and at the same time monitor the impact on hospitals and what have you. So the goal again is to save lives, protect lives, while we work to enable you to start living your life again. So keep in mind that every decision is going to have some other impact. And so Enrico asks about plans to increase antibody testing. The state of New York is increasing antibody testing. There is greater access. It will continue to expand, and we will continue to encourage people to take those tests. If you have a physician that you want to ask about, many of the physician groups, medical groups in Dutchess have access to the tests. You should ask your doctor if they do. And if you are likely to have come into contact with or likely to have contracted the disease or known to have contracted the disease, they may very well want to conduct that antibody testing. What we should be aware of is we're going to continue to, by the way, to expand access to diagnostic testing as well. That could be rapid tests. You take it very quickly, and you'll know the results very quickly, or the standard test at one of the test sites that we operate. As we test more, we will continue to have more positives. As we open up activity, there will be people who contract the disease. And so the goal of the pause, of the shutdown, if you will, was not that we could kill the disease. It was that we would minimize the impact on the healthcare system, minimize the severity of cases, and protect as many lives as possible. So we're not going to be in this stage of pause forever, and certainly the public's only going to accept it for as long as possible. I think you understand the value of what we've done, knowing the devastation that comes with it. At the same time, though, we're going to restart activities, and as that happens, we will do it in the context of those broad state parameters. We will set what goals we can. We'll work to do it carefully and deliberately, but there will be people who contract COVID, and so you'll see those numbers, sort of track on the dashboard and elsewhere. So we're going to see people get the disease, and ultimately we're going to have to test and respond effectively. I was asked about protocols for nursing homes, and I will tell you that we have a good work group that's been interacting with our nursing homes in Dutchess County since the onset of the pandemic. County government has no regulatory authority over nursing homes at all. The only what we were able to achieve is done through the relationships we've established in our Office for the Aging. Our health department and others have good relationships with the staff and the administration, so we began early coordinating that. We saw, as I said last week, positive cases without symptoms in nursing home facilities in Ulster County, so we joined Ulster and immediately began testing at nursing homes. So the state protocol didn't require full testing of everyone at a nursing home. We began that today, in fact, at Wingate and Beacon. Over the course of 3 days, we'll complete that, and then we have every several days a test regimen at nursing homes throughout Dutchess. Now, we're going to test every resident, and we've asked the state for more testing and rapid tests so we can test staff as well. And the goal is to test staff and to test residents. And as we identify positive cases, keep in mind nursing homes have protocols for infectious disease, and the goal will be ultimately to protect the population. So in some cases, nursing homes may be able to adequately, in essence, quarantine individuals who are positive, but if that number is worse than we think it is, we'll have to respond differently. We'll work with the nursing homes on that. So you should know that relationship is ongoing. We're monitoring it, and we're working toward it every day. John asked about volunteering. We continue to maintain Dutchess Responds. If you visit dutchessny.gov, you can click on Dutchess Responds. We're always looking for volunteers. We continue to grow the medical reserve course, so if you have some medical background, you can sign up there. If you want to volunteer in general, you can sign up there. We're continuing to raise funds. If you have resources you'd like to donate for food, transportation, and services for those who are in need. If you'd like to volunteer, there's still a need to deliver food and to offer some transportation, and we welcome you to do that. So we encourage you, if you'd like to visit dutchessny.gov, you can volunteer at Dutchess Responds, and we're grateful for that. We also mentioned, not necessarily as a wrap up, but I'll mention it now while we wait for some more questions. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and Dutchess County is very, very blessed to have comprehensive mental health services, and we're thankful for those who provide that help. Now more than ever, we're probably, many of us, confronting different emotions and maybe overwhelmed by some of them. Dutchess County continues to operate our helpline 24/7. You can call or text 845-485-9700, 845-485-9700 in order to receive some assistance. We continue to manage our helpline. Our stabilization center continues to function for those dealing with addiction and mental health concerns 24 hours a day, 7 days a week through telemedicine. We're available to help you. 1 out of 5 people experience a mental illness in their lifetime, and I think to recognize mental illness right up front acknowledges that we need to confront the stigma. And in this county, we want you to know that you're not alone and that there are services available to you. I encourage you to continue to visit dutchessny.gov, to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for some ideas, to continue to kind of embrace some sense of normalcy as we continue through this moment of pause, if you will. And Dutchess County has been very, I think, aggressive in trying to provide services and opportunities to you can find that on Facebook and on the county's website. Let me also tell you, I have my mask. We're still reminding you that we need to be very cognizant, aware that we're trying to protect each other from the disease and trying to slow the transmission of the disease. I'd offer that we're still, if you're out in public, you're heading out to the grocery store. We're asking you to shop solo. Remember to try to stick within your family. And not necessarily, obviously, go out shopping in groups, but rather shop solo. If you're out on the rail trail or taking part in a park or a facility, out enjoying nature, we ask you to keep it small. The expectation is that you social distance, and if you can't, that you wear a mask. And so, for those of you out shopping or what have you, always have a mask available, or a face covering. Face covering can be just a scarf around your neck, or you can make a mask. Visit us at dutchessny.gov or Facebook. We have a do-it-yourself sort of video that you can follow along to craft a mask for yourself. Very, very important that we continue to do that in the hopes, again, of slowing the transmission. was it Danielle asked about daycares. The truth is currently daycares are considered essential. So it's really up to the daycare provider to make that decision, but I will tell you that the expectation that the governor has, and we do as well, is as businesses reopen, we need to have the daycare support. So we expect that there will be an effort to work with daycare providers, and I know that daycare providers, I know like mine, for instance, for my kids, is surveying to see how many people feel like they're going to be going back to work anytime soon, how many feel comfortable sending their children to a daycare setting. Recognizing that kids are likely to get sick. Now, we do know this about the disease. Many young people weather it. It doesn't mean that you can't get it, and it doesn't mean that you can't transmit it to someone else, but it does mean that, at the very least, we know that the children have been weathering the disease pretty aggressively. So from our perspective, and the governor said this, daycare facilities need to be available, and we agree. Kristen asked about reopening courts. The court system is functioning at this point with the expectation that they'll continue to function virtually until June. We're waiting to see what the New York State court system decides. We believe that if we get to the point of starting the reopening process in the week of May 19th, that government activities that perhaps have been precluded to some degree will start to advance, and courts would be among them, but not before June 1st. So do not expect to have courts return from the virtual setting ahead of the June 1st timeline. However, courts are still considering certain activities, and if you have a question regarding that, you should, one, reach out to, if you have an attorney, your attorney at the court system, or you can reach out to us, and we'll try to give you that answer. Elena is asking about when family will be able to visit. When will we, that's just generally, I assume, when can we visit each other? Not for a little bit longer. We're encouraging people, if you're not in the same household, not to congregate yet. I mean, there are certainly ways that can be done. We took our kids up to visit their grandmother, and we sat in the car outside and kind of yelled to her on the porch. I know that it's a real struggle. I know it's a challenge, but for the time being, in particular, for senior citizens, the goal, of course, is not to transmit the disease to them, and we know that they're a vulnerable population, and out of our love for them, we want to try to slow that transmission. So I wouldn't expect that we would advise you to go do that anytime too soon. And even as we reopen and ultimately reopen entirely, I think there's going to be pretty decent instruction until there's a vaccine or some therapy for managing the disease. The vulnerable populations will be discouraged, although I'm sure there'll be some resemblance of normalcy, but we still would want to ensure that older people, vulnerable populations, are kept as safe as possible. So Elena is she did ask, I apologize. Let me remind you that, again, there are ways that we can still stay connected. We kind of talk about this. Just because we're physically distant doesn't mean we need to be emotionally distant or spiritually distant. We can still pray virtually. We can still interact with one another virtually, whether it's through some of the technology that we've all come to learn. Teams, or I know some use Google Classroom for school settings, or Zoom. Certainly Facebook and social media provides you that opportunity, as does any handheld device, creating these virtual opportunities, and please take advantage of them. I know it's a challenge, but in some ways it's made life a little bit easier to communicate. In our household, Grandma can be on the Echo show right on the counter and have dinner with us, well, not physically but virtually. We'll get back to normal soon. We will get back to normal. There will be those opportunities again. We just need to hold firm a little bit longer as we begin to reopen and restart, and also obviously manage the disease and save lives together. Gary asked about dashboard numbers, including people who come up from New York City for a weekend. Well, the truth is, if you're a Dutchess County resident and you've tested positive, you're on the Dutchess County dashboard. If you're a resident someplace else who tests positive, you'll be on another dashboard. So our numbers are for Dutchess County residents. Now, there are many people who have seasonal homes here who have second homes here who have chosen to stay in their second homes. That is their right. They are. Certainly, we advised some time ago that if you're coming up from New York City and sort of coming home, we'd ask you to stay put for a while to slow that transmission. We cannot point to any outbreak of COVID-19 or can't point on the testing that we've seen some outbreak of COVID-19 because of individuals coming home to their second homes here in Dutchess. There certainly is always going to be that. I mean, I know responsible adults who have gone off traveling elsewhere from Dutchess to other places, and so at the end of the day, we discourage people from bringing the disease with them, and certainly if you're vulnerable or if you feel as if that you might be ill or have some of the symptoms, you shouldn't travel. We ask people to stay local. If you're living in Dutchess County, we want you to stay local and not necessarily travel out of the county or out of the state, even if some other state is reopened. The goal here is to make sure that we're slowing the transmission, we're saving, or we're helping people, and we're saving lives. And again, using the indicators that I think are important, hospitalizations and the severity of hospitalizations as it relates to positive tests. If we can slow those numbers and continue those numbers in decline, we'll be able to get back to some resemblance or some semblance of normalcy. If you have a question, add that to the comment below. We'll try to continue to get to as many as possible. Leanne is asking, why are all people required to use absentee ballots? People should have the option to vote in person. Well, number one, you're not required to use absentee ballots for the June primary or the village and local elections that will happen in September. You're being given that opportunity. So two things. Number one, school district elections will occur via absentee ballot. So that is correct. For a school district election, you'll be receiving a piece of mail, an absentee ballot, and a confirmation that you know you can vote for school budget. That is the direction of the governor. Those are not traditional sort of elections administered by the Board of Elections or the County Board of Elections. So you will vote for school district elections and your budget vote by absentee. The decision was that in those circumstances, because in many cases they're single poll sites with higher risk individuals who work those poll sites, and because they would occur so soon, the decision was to allow those to occur via absentee ballot only. But for the June elections and the on-again, off-again, on-again Democratic presidential primary in the state of New York, you'll be mailed an application for an absentee ballot. You can choose then to vote, to complete that application, and if you choose, vote by absentee. Otherwise, there will be poll sites open. They'll be limited in number. There will be precautions taken to allow you to social distance. So be prepared to take time if you're going to go to the polls to vote. Our Board of Elections, Eric Haight and Beth Soto are the commissioners of elections, they are working aggressively to plan for the primary election. They're working with our staff to be sure that we have staff options for the poll sites. And they've been working with town supervisors and village mayors across the county, city mayors across the county to make sure that municipal buildings are available for poll sites. So very, very grateful to those who are cooperating. You will get an absentee ballot application. You can choose not to vote by absentee if you wish. My suggestion to you is to consider filling out that absentee ballot application. If you end up voting in person, they don't count your absentee ballot. So make sure that, but the goal, of course, is if you don't think you're going to get to the polls, fill out that absentee ballot application. If you want to go to the polls, you can do that, but we want you to be safe about it. Eric and others are asking about DMV. The Department of Motor Vehicles, as you likely know, is a state agency administered at the local level here by the Dutchess County Clerk Brenna Kendall. Some of the clerk responsibility and services are still ongoing, so you can access them. Call first. You can access them here. We don't have an answer yet. So we would expect that as we restart activities, that DMV would be among the first to start, although limited. My guess is more through appointment or limited access to certain DMV locations. And I want to warn you, again, being specific and brutally honest, some of our satellite offices are not adequate to ensure the kind of social distance and the health precautions that we want to take. So the clerk will make a determination as to which offices, when the time comes over the next several weeks, they can start to reopen, which offices could be reopened, and then how can we staff them appropriately. So be prepared for the possibility that some of our satellite offices wouldn't open because we can't necessarily meet the expectations for precautions. So Jean has asked, is there a list of what businesses belong in what phase? The short answer is yes. The governor's office has prepared that, but whatever we are prepared for today, I guarantee you will change a little bit tomorrow. So this is, you can visit the governor's website, and we can provide you that information to get to the list, although we'll try to get that, we'll get that breakout on our website too. We'll get it somewhere listed on the county's website, so you have it. The expectation is sort of phase one is those things that I think you think would be logical: construction, manufacturing, landscaping, things where you can engage in the social distance, slowly sort of edge into opening activities, and then every 2 weeks, sort of incrementally, more businesses. Now, what we do know is that the state sort of has created this essential list, businesses that they deem essential and not essential. And again, I don't like that determination. I think every business is essential. There's certain things that we can manage, and certain things we can't with the precautions. Those things that we can manage, the county is going to ask. We've been working with businesses across Dutchess to establish protocols to allow certain business types to reopen safely. If they fit within the expectations of holding those numbers down, our agencies are going to ask the state and respond to that, and hopefully the state will consider allowing those to begin the process of restarting. Again, very deliberately, very carefully, and we'll be very honest with you about those steps, about what businesses qualify and sort of which should or could open when. To that point, a lot of folks are still having troubles accessing the Small Business Administration loan and Paycheck Protection Program. There is quite a bit of money that's gotten to businesses already, but not enough, and too many businesses are still frustrated. I've got a friend I follow on social media. He owns a tattoo parlor. He's been trying to get access, and all I can tell you is that the system that the federal government and the state government have set up for small business assistance and unemployment remain overwhelmed, and they just are not keeping pace. And we've offered some suggestions on how to make them work a little bit more effectively. We're hopeful the state takes us up on those efforts. In the meantime, Dutchess County will continue to flesh out new ideas to provide assistance to small businesses as best we can. We're trying to be as helpful as we can. And I would encourage you to continue to maintain a relationship with Dutchess. BNN.com, the Dutchess Business Notification Network.com. It's your way of communicating regularly with the business community. We have about 10 minutes. If you have a question, simply add that to the comment below, and we'll try to get to a few more before we close out this afternoon. Now, we'll be live again next Wednesday. We may come to you live again one more time this week. We're going to try to get into a regular routine now, as we are a regular routine. We're going to add to that. And try to come to you live maybe as often as twice per week to discuss what we know, so that we can be clear with you, or as clear as we can with you on information that you'll need to know. So do be prepared for that, but we'll be together again next Wednesday in a telephone town hall and a Facebook Live event that you can participate in. Again, and to prep you, our goal will be to get to as many telephone questions as we can. Let me use this time to prepare you for what we worry about. In fact, today the county legislature convenes its meetings. Its May meetings, committee day is today. They'll be taking up some resolutions to add some resources for us to purchase more PPE and others. But that is just a good reminder that they'll meet today on committees, and then Monday they'll meet again virtually for their full board meeting. We're monitoring the fiscal condition of the county. We certainly expect a significant reduction in sales tax receipts. We expect that some people aren't going to be able to pay the property taxes. That in itself poses some significant revenue challenges for us. We're preparing for as little as a $15 million loss to as high as a $75 million loss in revenues countywide. So from our perspective, we're going to monitor. We are monitoring that. We're planning. We've restricted certain expenditures, frozen training and travel, most, if not all, hiring. Some of our capital projects are being stalled in order to identify where we are financially. We're also calling on the federal government to assist us. I have to say this. We are not asking the federal government to bail us out. This isn't about trying to make up for someone else's losses. We're asking the federal government to assist us with a lifeline so that we can continue to do the work that the federal government, the state government expects of us. We're providing the services that you rely on every day, We are the public health arm, so we're the ones tracing and monitoring cases and responding to the public health concern. We're the interface many times for small businesses, and we need the federal government's assistance. So we have asked for direct aid from the federal government to county governments, and with that direct aid, we will minimize our losses and continue to respond. It doesn't mean that we can survive without reducing the size of our workforce. It doesn't mean that we aren't going to have to cut back on certain services. We're just trying to minimize that pain, and we'll be very transparent with the folks who work for us. We have not decided today to lay off or to furlough employees, in part because, well, twofold. One, we recognize that there are people out there without a paycheck. We don't want to compound that problem, quite frankly. And the county's financial condition is strong enough to allow us to sustain where we are for now. But that does not mean that we may not see reductions in the future. It does not mean that we will not have to make cutbacks. We're just trying to minimize the fear, minimize the financial and economic impact that comes with mass government layoffs, and at the same time attempt to provide the services that you expect from us. So we'll be very candid about that, be very transparent about that as we move forward, but we're not announcing any of those kinds of things today. We're considering all tools, all options. We've done this once before, not to this degree, but remember, I came into office 9 years ago. We faced a budget gap, and we overcame it together. We did scale back. We're going to use the tools we had, and we'll keep you posted as we proceed. A couple more questions. Mary is asking, how well is Dutchess doing in terms of the 7 qualifiers set by the governor? We meet about 5 of them to date, with some variation. The 2 that we have to continue to monitor have to do with hospitalization and deaths in hospitals, and also testing. We believe that we're currently on track to meet those sometime in the May 15th timeline. We also believe that there's some latitude within those data points. Again, the things that we monitor the most are total positive cases per day, total hospitalizations, the severity of those hospitalizations, and then monitoring the growth in the total number of cases. And those things are important for us. But we're making good progress, and the numbers are coming in at least well enough. Only a few people on the Dutchess Rail Trail wearing masks. Aren't masks expected, Joanne? Joanne, if you and your brother, I don't know, or you and your sibling, or you and your family are out, only maybe just you and someone from your household out together, you should have a mask on you. You're not required to wear that mask unless you come into contact with somebody and can't social distance. And so I warn people, many times there are groups that are out. Sometimes they are families, and those families can be out without a mask on, but they should have a face covering on them in some case. So out of respect and consideration, and out of concern for health, and in accordance with the expectation, if I'm out on the rail trail, I'll have a mask in my pocket, and if I'm alone, I might not have it on my face, but if I see you coming down the rail trail, I should put that mask on and cover up. And so that's what we expect of people. Please be considerate of that. It is an act that will help us save lives. I'll offer to you that all of this is very basic, and we're asking people to be considerate. I know that there are those who say, you can't tell me what to do. And you're right, I can't, but I'm asking. I'm asking the residents of Dutchess County to continue to do the things that you've been doing so that we can get started again. And if we want to not have people get sick, if we want folks not to lose their lives, and if we want to get back to living our own lives, there are certain basic things that we can do to be considerate, and one of those is simply having a mask on you. Again, walking alone with your husband or wife or kids on the rail trail, you don't have to wear one, but you should have one. And if you come close or you see someone coming at you, you and they should cover up for the moments that you're going to be within those 6 feet. That's the guidance. Peg is asking, when will dog groomers open up? 2 realities. Number one, dog or animal health or health care is permissible. It's essential. And so there are certain conditions where grooming for the safety and health of a particular animal, that still is permissible. If grooming the dog has to do with their health or safety, that's deemed, at least gray enough, deemed essential. I would suspect that more broadly, that dog grooming would be in the early stages of reopening, and we'll keep you posted on that. Judy is saying unemployment, cannot make claim even after callback, 42 days, 2,000 calls that she's made. Judy, you are not alone. We have expressed to the state of New York that the best way to do the unemployment system is to have people sign up online, and we will follow, and then do it entirely electronically. This callback requirement is only creating more frustration. Obviously there's value to it, but under the circumstances, it's causing havoc for you. You're waiting to get access. It's creating anxiety for the person on the other side of the phone who's trying to be helpful, and it's slowing down the system. And I do think that the way to do this, quite frankly, and we've said this, is allow that process to be online, audit it to make sure there isn't fraud, and then follow up when there is. We'll continue to push the state. We believe that there are steps that they can take to be more helpful. We've got about 5 more minutes. When will a decision be made and announced on whether or not Dutchess County can enter Phase 1? Here's the thing that I'll say again. The governor has established these phases and these stages. There's 7 indicators. We are moving in the right direction toward all of them. As of today, there isn't a region in New York that meets any one of them entirely. As we come in closer and closer to the May 15th unpause, there will be the chance that we meet them. I believe that we will be close in that week. So the May 15th to the May 22nd time frame, I believe Dutchess County, based on our numbers today, and this could change tomorrow based on positive cases or hospitalizations, but based on what we see today, we are trending toward a slow restart the week of May 19th. And again, what we know is everything we know is influenced by other variables. Tomorrow, we can learn something new that alters things just a little bit, which is why, again, going back to that pledge, let's push that one back up. We'll leave it up there. But that's our commitment to you. I really want you to appreciate this, and this is what we're going to hold ourselves to. When we know something, we'll tell you. And right now, we are trending in that direction, and I promise you we are working both to protect lives and to help you get back to your life. Any other questions we want to hit before we close up? We've got a couple more minutes. I'd like to give you that chance before we say goodbye today. Again, if you have a question you want followed up, visit dutchessny.gov. You can call our hotline at 845-486-3555. And we'll be again with you next Wednesday. It's possible we'll be with you one more time this week. We're contemplating a potential Facebook town hall again on Friday, but that's really dependent on whether or not there's some new information we want to share with you. But we'll get into a regular routine, I think, of doing this likely twice a week with you so that you're updated and we can get to any questions. So before we close, if there are any questions, we'll do maybe one more. Again, I want to be as responsive as we can. As we get to next week, we'll do a telephone town hall and Facebook Live on Wednesday evening with you and for you. What about horse farms offering training, when they'll be open? That's a good one. I'll tell you, animal maintenance is not is not declared non-essential. So we actually had this conversation earlier. Ron Hicks from my office is trying to get some clarity from the Empire State Development Corporation. But it doesn't seem that there's a universal closure order for boarding horses, or it's more whether or not there's activities going on. So it would seem to us maintenance of, care for, and general riding of a horse, not any other animal, a horse, would still be deemed appropriate, but we want to make sure we get clarity, and we did receive from a resident today a request, and we're asking for some clarity from the state because we don't see it clearly as a wholesale non-essential or closed activity. It would be, for instance, if you ran a camp of some kind or an activity of some kind where groups of people would come together, that would clearly not be permissible currently. But animal maintenance, care, and riding is part of caring for a horse, we think is not clearly deemed non-essential. So we have one more before we close up. I see them writing, so I want them to be able to do that before we close up today. So again, we'll see you again next Wednesday. We'll take one more question, I think. If you'd like to follow up with us, please follow us on Facebook or Twitter. Are we retesting cases? The antibody testing is available after the fact, but if you've tested positive, currently we're not retesting. What's that? There's the protocol for recovery, which is you've exceeded a timetable where you've no longer shown symptoms or you exceeded the quarantine period, that's the protocol currently. There's not a retest. But for those of you who may have been quarantined and have to go back to work, you can get a letter from your physician that says you've met those requirements, and if necessary, you might have to reach out to the Department of Health, and our health department will be happy to try to coordinate some assistance for you to clear up that you've met the protocols and can return back to work if you're an essential worker. So I'm going to end by saying thank you for being here. Please thank our interpreters as well when you get a chance. We're very, very grateful that we can communicate to everyone. I'd offer to you our thanks. We're making progress. This is the beginning of a new day, meaning that we are looking at a phased restart sometime soon. You can continue to follow us and get updated on Facebook and on Twitter. If you have a question, visit dutchessny.gov. In the meantime, stay safe, be healthy, and be kind to each other.